It started with a phone call. Then, the money was gone. His best friend was smiling the whole time. But the final twist is what happened to him. Subscribe for the full story.
On a Tuesday morning in March, Frank Delgado picked up his phone, saw a number he didn't recognize, and answered it, still thinking in that moment that his best friend of 22 years was exactly who he said he was. He was wrong. And by the time Frank understood how wrong, the money was gone. The company was gone, and so was the man he trusted more than his own brother, Chastadon. This is the story of how a handshake deal between two friends turned into one of the most calculated betrayals either of them would ever live through, and how long it took Frank to realize the man destroying his life was smiling at him the entire time. Stick around to the end, because the final twist in this story isn't what happened to Frank. It's what happened to the man who betrayed him, years later, at the hands of someone else. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Frank Delgado met Mitch Sorensen in 1997 at a community college welding class in Ohio. Frank was 26, recently married, trying to build something from nothing. Mitch was the guy everyone liked. Funny, sharp, always the one with a plan. Within 5 years, they'd started a small metal fabrication business together. No lawyers, no formal contract. Just a handshake and a promise, whatever happens, we're in this 50-50. For the next 2 decades, that promise held. The business grew from a 2-man garage operation into a company worth millions, supplying parts to manufacturers across 3 states. Frank ran operations. Mitch ran the books. Frank trusted Mitch with everything, not because he was naive, but because Mitch had earned it. When Frank's father died in 2008, Mitch covered his responsibilities for 6 weeks without being asked. When Mitch's marriage fell apart in 2011, Frank was the one who showed up every night with a case of beer and no judgment. This wasn't a business relationship, this was a brotherhood, which is exactly why nobody, not Frank, not his wife, not a single person in that company, ever thought to ask a simple question: who's actually watching the money? In late 2016, small things started happening. A vendor called asking why an invoice hadn't been paid.
Right.
Mitch brushed it off.
The system
a bank
says they
error,
don't even
he said.
exist.
Nothing to worry about.
I need to check all
Frank
of
didn't
these.
think twice. Why would he? Mitch had never given him a reason to doubt him. Not once in 19 years. But Frank's wife, Denise, noticed something. Mitch had started avoiding family dinners. He was short with people. He'd bought a new truck, cash, despite telling Frank, just months earlier, that the company was tight on cash flow. She told Frank something felt off. Frank told her she was overthinking it. Mitch was just stressed. People change when they go through a divorce. In hindsight, that conversation would haunt Frank for years. Because Denise wasn't wrong. She was 2 years too early. And completely right. He had no idea this was only the beginning. In January 2019, a new accountant was brought in to modernize the company's books. Mitch's idea, ironically, to look more professional for a potential buyer. Within 3 weeks, she found something that didn't add up. A vendor account that had been paid regularly for 6 years. For a supplier that, according to state records, didn't exist. It got worse. That vendor account traced back to an LLC. That LLC traced back to a P.O. box. And that P.O. box traced back to Mitch's ex-wife's sister, a woman Frank had met exactly twice. For 6 years, Mitch had been quietly siphoning company funds through a shell vendor. Small enough not to trigger alarms, consistent enough to add up to over 4 million. Frank has described that moment, sitting in the accountant's office, staring at 6 years of statements, as the moment his entire adult life reorganized itself in front of him. Every conversation, every excuse, every late night Mitch said he was catching up on paperwork. And then came the detail that broke him completely. Denise, his wife, had raised the alarm nearly 2 years earlier. Mitch had known she suspected something, and instead of stopping, he had simply gotten better at hiding it. Frank confronted Mitch on a Thursday afternoon in the same office where they'd shaken hands 22 years earlier. According to Frank, Mitch didn't deny it. He didn't apologize either. He reportedly said something to the effect of, the business owed him more than his salary ever paid him, and he'd simply taken what he felt he'd earned. No shouting, no tears. Just a calm, almost businesslike explanation for stealing from the person who had shown up for him at every low point in his life. Frank filed a police report the same week. Weeks later, a civil suit followed. Mitch didn't fight it. He'd already moved the money somewhere it couldn't be easily reached. The company that took 2 decades to build was insolvent within a year. Frank had to lay off 11 employees, some of whom had worked there since the beginning. Frank lost the business in 2020. He was 51 years old, with a mortgage, 2 kids in college, and a retirement account he'd have to raid just to stay afloat. Mitch, meanwhile, was charged with embezzlement. But because so much of the money had been moved offshore and through family members' accounts, prosecutors could only recover a fraction of it. He served 14 months. Frank never saw a cent of restitution. Frank rebuilt, slowly. He started a smaller consulting operation in 2021. It's nowhere near what the two of them built together, but it's his, and no one else's name is on it. He says the hardest part was never the money. It was accepting that the version of Mitch he grieved, the best man at his wedding, the man who showed up for his father's funeral, might never have fully existed at all. Here's the detail that changes how you might see this whole story. In 2023, Frank learned that Mitch, 3 years after his release, had entered a new business partnership in another state. And within 18 months, that new partner discovered Mitch had been quietly redirecting funds again. This time, though, there was no 22-year friendship to soften the blow. The new partner had ties to people far less patient than Frank. Mitch didn't serve time this time. He disappeared. And as of this recording, no one seems to know exactly where he ended up. Trust isn't given because someone's earned a spreadsheet full of good behavior. It's given because we want to believe the people closest to us are exactly who they appear to be. Frank Delgado didn't lose his business because he was careless. He lost it because he loved his friend more than he questioned him. And maybe that's not a weakness. Maybe that's just what it costs to actually trust someone. If someone you trusted completely ever did something like this to you, we want to hear it. Tell us your story in the comments below. And if you want another story like this one, click the video on your screen right now. Because trust me, this isn't even the worst one. Watch out for part 2. This is not the end of the story.